Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
You're welcome.
Council members have questions. Walter?
Thank you, ma'am. You mentioned the neighborhood meeting, I believe, and I'm looking at the sign-up sheet, and it looks like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people attended. How many people were notified, or households or something, about that meeting?
That's a good question. I can go back because I think I have. And we get the labels from the city, and so we just take the labels, we copy them. So I
quite
think that
often
there's
we
about,
get them in the packet. I don't think we had them in this packet.
Okay. I want to say, if I remember correctly, I had 3 or 4 sheets, and they each have 30 on them. So I think you're looking at 100 or so. But I understand that there's a question on notification. So the city went even beyond. State requires 300 feet. The city usually does 600. And I think because some neighbors, had some questions about receiving notice, that they actually even expanded that further. So I know when we asked the city to give us some labels for the invite to take a look at the staked area, I know I sent out 156. And that included much more beyond, And go ahead.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I was also going to bring up the parkland, the fact that I don't think many neighbors understand and realize that they actually have parkland right close to them. I spoke with one of them, and they just said, there's no parkland from here to wherever. And I told them, well, no, there is. There's parkland. It's not developed yet. It's in the same status as many of, the undeveloped parks in the community, but there is one that's much closer to them. So I really appreciate the fact that Mike and Bill included that, because I'm pretty sure that most of them don't realize that it's there.
Well, we unfortunately have a fair amount of undeveloped parkland in this community. If either Bill or Mike, do you know if Pinecone was included in the notification of the neighborhood meeting? And the reason I ask that is there are a lot of signatures from Pinecone on the petitions.
On the initial neighborhood meeting list, we provided a notice list that was 600 feet from the boundary of the replat that incorporated 4, maybe 5 properties on Pinecone that were just at the very south end of Pinecone and on the east side of the street. We did, when we got to the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, when we had some comments of concern about the notice area, we did extend and include and use the existing, the original subdivision boundary as a notice for, extended notice for Planning and Zoning Commission and for this evening. But those were not included in the neighborhood meeting. We typically take the property under consideration. We do a buffer of 600 feet off of that, and I think that only captured about 5 properties on Pinecone.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Wilson? Yes, Tom.
Just out of disclosure interests, I live on, I guess, the north end of Pinecone. I didn't get any notices for the public meeting, but I did get a notice for the walkabout thing, and I just didn't think it would be fair for me to go, given this is a hearing, so I didn't participate. So.
Appreciate the disclosure. Thanks, Tom. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you very much.
Is there other testimony in support of the proposed changes? Is there testimony in opposition or general testimony? Please.
I'm Mary Bostick, B-O-S-T-I-C-K. I live at 1614 Pinecone Road. And just as general information, I did receive the walkabout, and I had received also the petition and signed one of the petitions. I at no time was told that there wasn't going to be a park. They just showed me the various proposals, and I went and walked them myself, so that's how I got them. I actually came because of the park, and now my concerns are primarily because of the zoning changes and the high density abutting R2 where I am. That the statement of having a buffer between high density and R2 is a concern to me as a resident of an R2 neighborhood right nearby, and a 12-foot landscape isn't going to do it for a buffer. And I can also tell you that Indian Hills It was on its way to becoming an arterial when they opened up the bottom of it when doing the construction this spring. And if there is high-density housing down there and businesses at that end and a route to Safeway through there, there will be a lot of traffic, and that will become an arterial. And that, to me, is a concern as a resident that would make me even question whether I wanted to live there. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Bostic. Oh, excuse me, would you field a question from Councilmember
Actually, a
Steve?
question for staff from
Oh.
something that Ms. Bostic just said. Indian Hills was opened up?
The barriers were taken down when they were doing construction work at the bottom near Alturas Park this past spring.
Les, would you like to add to that, please?
Madam Mayor, I believe the reference is to when ITD was reconstructing State Highway 8 2 summers ago. They
Oh.
opened a section of that
Right.
section of Indian Hills as a temporary additional route for the
Yeah,
neighborhood.
I remember that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's been the only instance I'm aware of.
But the barricades are back up, are they not?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
They are now, but I remember the traffic.
Well, yeah, and that was detouring Highway 8 up there. Les, what is the timing to open up those barricades? It's tied to something to do with this property. Can you refresh my memory?
Yes.
Yes, I certainly can. The original subdivision had a phasing plan, and within Phase 2 was the construction of the intersection of Blaine Extension South and Indian Hills Drive Extension to the east. When that intersection was constructed and opened for traffic, at that point, the barricades on Indian Hills would be removed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bostic. Is there other testimony in opposition or general testimony?
Before I start my presentation, this is Don Regan, 1810 Lorien Lane and 812 Alturas Drive. We own a lot there. I had a question for Mike about his presentation. Would I be able to ask that before I start?
Sure, go ahead. If it will help clarify this for our city council,
Yes.
and this, keeping in mind the public hearing is open.
Yeah, can you go back to the picture of those circles around Rose Park in which neighborhoods come in? Sure. So the green. the
You
faint
want to
green
use the
one-
microphone, please, Mr. Regan?
Yeah, the faint green one includes Pine Cone there, right? Is that correct? That's a quarter mile from the current park that is owned by the city of Moscow?
Correct. It appears to be the east side of Pine Cone.
Right.
Those properties.
And the park to the left is a proposed park, right? The green one that's below Indian Hills there to the left side of the screen?
This is
Yes,
proposed?
yes.
That's dedicated. It's an undeveloped park.
Right, and that won't occur until they develop that area, is that correct? That area, that farmland there?
Correct.
So the sewers would have to come up from East Palouse River Drive, which might not occur in our lifetime, right? I mean, that's a very expensive thing to do, because there's no sewers in that area.
So, Ms. Regan, I would ask you to confine your comments to this proposed development. If you're concerned about, is it Indian Hills 8th? Is that what that would be over there? And that parkland development, when that might occur would be
Yeah.
speculative at this
Yeah.
point. But I think
Okay.
it's on here for purposes of illustration to show proximity for eventual parkland development. Walter, did you have a
Just
question
Following
before?
directly on that question, Bill, Mike, or Dwight, that's a dedicated park. Its development would occur when we have the money to develop it, or is it tied to something else happening first?
I think access needs to be provided to the park. It could be developed, I mean, it has been dedicated to the city, but there is no current existing public access to that property. So that's
But the
generally,
development of it could occur anytime we could afford to do it, which I don't see in my lifetime, but that's beside the point.
but there's no access to it.
Okay.
So there's no right-of-way that extends to that property
Okay,
currently.
thank you.
I guess my question is a matter of procedure for the hearing. If the discussion of the park is raised by city staff in our testimony or its that person's testimony and then raised by the applicant in that person's testimony, then it seems like it's fair game for discussion by other people. So I'm just trying to figure out, are the people in that neighborhood supposed to think of themselves as having a park nearby them or not? So I guess I'm trying to understand
Right, and
how, I think I have the same question that I'm hearing being asked by one of the members of the community. So I'm just trying to figure this out.
Yeah, and Mike, when he was talking about extension of utilities, and then we heard actually streets, the point was that this is would be an 8th addition to Indian Hills,
Right.
and that this is a future anticipated park, we know not when, and so that aspect would be speculative. So I'm just saying, in trying to focus on the prospects of these 2 parks over here with the stored in the back of your head idea that this may eventually become another park in the general vicinity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I mean, we kind of almost have a habit of doing this in Moscow, where
We-
we put a park out
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then say something's going to happen, and
Yes.
then we don't get a park, and then we have residents come and
Right.
float bond elections in order to get us to have
Sure.
parks. So I'm
It's
trying
fair
figure
game
out
to
when we're
mention
gonna-
that little green spot is over there on the left side. So please continue, Mr. Regan. And I understand you were kind to give me heads up that you are representing a group tonight. Is that right? So I've allotted up to 7 minutes for your presentation.
Yeah. When I'm ready here. It's just this here.
If you wanted to, it's up there. You advance by going here, go back here, and there's the point.
Okay, I'm ready to start.
And
Thank
do
you for
let
the
us-
opportunity to speak. Yeah, I am representing the Indian Hills neighborhood. You had 2 petitions, and I wanted to clarify the point that the second petition, which had 158 homeowners or neighbors' signatures, was after we received the email that Susan Wilson, the attorney for Thompson Development, sent to the neighbors and homeowners saying that it was misleading, and after people received the letter about the Parkland tour. So this was done afterwards, but we had to turn things in 5 days in advance because we wanted you, the council members, to see the petition. And there are 33 signatures from Phase 1, Indian Hills 6 edition, and it was mentioned half the lots in there haven't been developed, so that's a significant amount of homeowners living there who have signed. We feel the park should be in center of Phase 1, 2, and 3. The current park in Indian Hills 6 edition was proposed by the Thompsons and passed by City Council in 2008. We're asking them to honor their word on this. Our park should not be moved where it can be marketed for offices and high-density housing. We already went over the RO's designation. Here is, of course, our, let me try, this isn't working, let me try this one. Well, this is taken out of my time.
Does the cursor work?
Yeah, this is taken, yeah.
If you
Okay.
just hold it.
Hold it
keep
for a while.
holding it,
Yeah, this is
it'll-
taken out of my time because I'm going to be right up against 7
see.
minutes. Okay, it goes away again.
Mike, you want to use this?
Here you go. Just push the silver button.
I stopped
Oh,
your
there we
timer.
go.
So
Thank you.
You're good.
Okay. So this current park is Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3. People bought into Phase 1 because I've heard it from people when we were going around with the petition, because there's a park nearby, a park in a residential moderate density neighborhood. This park has been moved, just like this was marketed here. It's going to be marketed partially for the new zoning RO, which is high density. It's been increased because of the requirement by the city, as we mentioned, 4% increase in parkland dedication. We went to the neighborhood meeting. It was proposed by the attorney for Thompson Development that it was a gift, basically. We are giving you 10,000 extra feet. There was no mention of higher density or that the city required this. The notice, a number of residents outside of that zone were not notified and would have come to the neighborhood meeting.